As far as your kind of like origin story with what brought you to where you are today, I know you shared cancer when you were 15, that diagnosis. What was that point of life like for you in getting that diagnosis that I don't think you're ever prepared for at any age, but especially at an age like 15? I can only imagine how earth-shattering that probably was. So what was that experience like for you? And how did that experience change you and your perspective?
So, I mean, I can look at it now in retrospect, now that I'm no longer in that position. At the time, that was the first time I ever saw my dad cry. And my dad's like a no nonsense, like really serious kind of guy. So I knew it was pretty serious. That was the first time I've ever had to face my own mortality, understand that we are only in this vessel for a finite amount of time. And, it definitely shifted my perspective in understanding what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What happens when we go? And I've spent many days in that chapter thinking about why I'm here, thinking about, time. Time is a non-renewable source. We're not going to get that back. And so it definitely changed my perception in realizing that I want to spend my time with people that I really love. I also want to be very intentional about where I'm spending my time, where I'm at, who I'm with, the things that, the foods that I'm eating, everything. Everything needs to be intentional. And did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, time is something that it's like you said, it's an unrenewable resource, but it's often so, I think we look at it as like an endless thing because it's so intangible. It's not like you can have like a stack of money on the table. You're like, this is how much money I have, right? Like none of us can do that with time. We don't know. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 80 years from now. Like who knows, right? And there's so many different components of that. But I think especially when you are that young to be confronted with your mortality in that way, that really changes your perspective. And I think I would imagine, I guess you can speak to this, it forces you to grow up a lot too.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
I was pulled out of a high school. I guess I didn't live a very normal, what is normal, right? I didn't live a very normal childhood. And so I had to be pulled out of high school and I was homeschooled. I wasn't allowed to see people very much because I was very sick. And then there was one moment where I became neutropenic. So my white blood cell count became very low. And I had to get rushed to the hospital. I grew cultures in my blood. I almost died, and so I had to be quarantined for a while. I couldn't even see my parents. So it's very unique. It's not a very common thing. I didn't know many kids that were going through the same thing. I spent a lot of time alone. I spent a lot of time in my own thoughts. It ended up kind of being a good thing, though. It was like my time for meditation, my time to speak to God. Those were the conversations that I've had. Oof, get some chicken skin. It was the time that I could spend talking to God, and really it brought me closer to God. It brought me closer to my faith. And no, I don't think it was a very common experience. But the times that I spent a lot by myself, alone by myself, I found out more about myself, and I became my best friend, which, kind of sounds a little weird. But I think, we should all talk to ourselves like our best friend. We should all, speak to yourself very nicely.